There we go.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the June 17th edition of the Gateway API Community Sync. As always, this meeting is governed by the Kubernetes Code of Conduct, boiling down effectively to be nice to one another. So please do be nice to one another. Please use the raise hand feature in Zoom if you have questions or interjections throughout the conversation, as this helps us to kind of just keep things flowing. This is an open agenda meeting, so there is a meeting doc linked to the invite. And if you want to add something to the agenda, please feel free, add it to the bottom. If we can get to it today, we will. If not, we can always put it on the parking lot for next time. There's not much on the agenda. I do notice that we have kind of a lot of people here today and possibly a chance that some of them are new. So we'll give a couple seconds if somebody wants to introduce themselves or just say hi. And if you are new, or maybe this is just the first time you've really spoken up and want to say like who you are and what you're doing with Gateway API or what implementation you're working on, anything like that, we'd love to hear from you. It's always good. Give a couple seconds for that.
So can I go?
Absolutely.
My name is Konrad Argashinsky. I'm working at Google, and I'm working in the area of load balancers, interested in caching and CDNs. So yeah, those kind of topics. I was looking at some
Cool.
proposals, GPs of caching at the community. They were proposed some time ago, and they are still right now. So at some point, maybe I can propose something, but for now, I would like to listen in and see the dynamics here and maybe contribute in future. Thank you.
Very cool. Welcome.
Hello, everyone. I'm Norvin. I joined a couple of months or even a year ago, once or twice. Now I'm back. I also have some time dedicated to work on Gateway API. So excited, looking forward to that. At the moment, I'm helping out with the backend TLS policy reviews, working on those. I try also to help a bit with CORS. So those are the two hot features we are also currently implementing in our implementation. Happy to help where I can. Hope to see all of you a bit more often in the next couple of months.
Very cool. Welcome.
Cool.
Hey, my name is Damian Sawicki. So the words you can see is the name of this room. I work at Google actually with Katarzyna and also with Rob. And at the moment, I guess I'm mostly interested in CORS, as some of you might have noticed.
Yeah, saw some of your reviews. Welcome. Thanks for coming.
Hi, I'm Clench. I'm from India. I'm working in IBM. I am as a software architect. So actually, I have been here. Actually, I'm part of IBM from acquisition of Software AG. So I was working in API management products. So for the past 10 years. So in IBM also, I'm working on the same domain, API management. So want to contribute some of the ideas which I had in API management from my experience to the Gateway API. So that's how I see me on this. Sorry if my video settings are not working. So maybe I will join. I will connect the video next time.
Okay. No, we hear you clearly though. So
Yeah.
cool. Very cool. Welcome.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
All right. Going once, going twice. Sold. I'll start sharing screen over here. And we'll get started on
Sold
the
to the
agenda.
man with the earth in the background. Sorry.
And now I play the game of getting the screen sharing to work correctly. And I think it's probably right. There. Look right?
Yep.
All right. All right. So light agenda for today. Actually, I thought we had.
I thought I added something weird. Okay.
Yeah. Well, add it now if you didn't, because I didn't see anything. There's some stuff in next. Did you want to talk about CORS? Light agenda for today. We'll start with please fill things in the agenda above triage. We'll do triage if we have time at the end. So 140 updates. So today is technically the end of the period we were giving for experimental gaps to get to provisional. For going ultimately to experimental in V140. Most of them at this point seem like they're really close. None of them have merged quite yet. But none of them look so far away as if they're not going to make it. So just keep in mind, please try to get those done before the end of the day. If you're having trouble or timing issues or anything like that, please reach out to the maintainers for support. And otherwise, things are kind of moving along there. The only other update I think that was kind of interesting was, I think, Candace. I didn't put it on the agenda here, but I do want to kind of talk about, did you get a chance? Does anybody have any comments on the sorry, give me a second. Backend TLS policy update from John Howard. We said we were going to give that a couple of weeks. It's gotten to about that point. It looks like it's mostly in good shape. I need to do one more review of it, but the updates that I've gotten is that it seems like it mostly is in good shape, but I'd like to give a second for us, anybody who's interested in the backend TLS policy going to standard, like to chat about that.
I need to reread it as well.
Is this John's PR?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's just drop that link in the notes for anyone who is catching the recording.
Yeah, I can represent that. I don't know if John is on this call. No, I don't see
I
him.
do not believe he is.
I can summarize it. Shane, do you want to open it up? No pressure if not, but I
Yeah.
think it's
Is somebody
useful to discuss.
fetching the URL real quick?
Yeah.
Otherwise, I can go find it, but it sounded like somebody might put it.
Yeah, let me drop it into the agenda.
Thank you.
Eventually. All right, we got it. It's 3835. So basically, this change is proposing that, you know, that in terms of the actual API difference, it's quite tiny. There are two changes. One is I think the most significant one is that you can use backend TLS policy to target something in another namespace. The rationale for that is basically to reuse the Gamma fundamentals, you know, the Gamma model that already exists of if you are targeting something in another namespace, you are applying, I guess, a consumer policy, but you're applying client configuration here. So it's basically all requests originating from this namespace to the backend over in this other namespace should use this configuration. This allows the persona separation that John was so concerned about, and I think it's fair that you know, in many cases, the person that is configuring backend TLS policy should not be the application owner. It's really something that you want, you know, in the gateway case, a gateway owner to be able to configure and say, when I talk to this application, I expect it to meet these requirements, right? I expect it to have a cert that is signed by the CA. I expect it to have some of these SANs, one of these SANs, etc. So that's the fundamental change. And I think the way that the proposal now reads, the API change is one, tiny, and two, fully backwards compatible, which makes, and also fairly consistent with other things we've done in the past. So I actually feel relatively comfortable with this at this point.
What does
Um,
backward compatible mean to you in this case? That if you don't specify a specific namespace, it just defaults to the previous behavior if it has to be in the same namespace?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's
Yeah.
it's basically just it is adding a new feature roughly or capability to backend TLS
Yeah.
policy.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, if I can chime in, I think the way I see it is that it's not necessarily if, I mean, this is, we can think about it as a feature, right? Because theoretically, I mean, the previous capabilities with the previous GEP are all satisfied without any API change, basically. But it's just the important part is like enabling the semantics and the capabilities for consumers, whether it's a gateway, by the way, or whether it's a Gamma workload, to be able to override
I
that.
mean,
And I think it's very useful. I mean, I actually came across the same problem with other policies other than TLS, that actually the clients, because you know we I'm not sure how does it work in Linkerd, so probably this is representative of Istio Flynn, but like you know, you deploy a policy, but suddenly all the clients in the mesh are actually you know, actually impacted by this, which are not in the same namespace. So it's pretty concerning if they don't have anything to be able to override that.
yeah, there are aspects of that that are a little different sometimes in Linkerd, but you definitely have ways that you can apply policy to everybody at once, you know. So yeah. No, I think it makes sense overall. I absolutely think it's adding a feature, but okay, yeah, that's fine. Seems like a worthwhile feature.
Yeah, and the other thing
What?
I would say is like beyond this namespace, I'm not sure, maybe I didn't hear Rob, maybe you covered it in the from field. Did you cover it? So I'm not repeating myself.
It's not part of this
Yeah,
PR. I think you may have mentioned that as a future.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
not part
Yeah.
of this PR, but just as a more future looking. I mean, it's in the gap, right? Like where theoretically within the same namespace, you want to distinguish clients to have different, or you know, whether it's identity, whether it's workloads, whatever, or whether it's gateway in the same namespace. So this from field is something that we should and could look at a feature enhancement. And this is also came up as well to be useful.
Might be
for
worth
other
focusing
things.
on the stuff that's actually in this PR right now,
Yeah.
though, just in the
Yeah.
interest of time.
Sounds good.
So, just trying to wear the old maintainer hat. I'll let you go first, Candice. Go ahead. I didn't see your hand up.
Well, you did have your hand up before mine, but maybe
Yeah, I'd
we're
like to hear your thoughts, and then
okay.
I'll share mine.
Yeah, so I haven't had a chance to re-review the pull request. I think it was taken out of draft a few days ago. And so my main concern here is whether this new feature needs to be experimental as we're graduating back in TLS policy to standard.
My
I
It's a
concern was
really good
related.
idea.
Yeah, my concern was related to that. My concern was if this is backwards compatible, we say it's small, but we know the impact in terms of what we'll have to do kind of as a last minute change before we go to standard is testing and compliance, or rather conformance and compliance. Why did I say that? And then all that goodness. Does it make more sense to just say, okay, this is nice, but this can target 150? If it's backwards compatible, then it's additive, right? Like, can this just be a 150 and then maybe just experimental field that we add on so that we can continue with what we have, because that was pretty close to wrapped up and kind of like ready to go.
A couple things. One thing that I'm realizing, I actually can't remember if backend TLS policy has a section name already. If it doesn't in the target ref, that feels like it should be a blocker, like the ability to, target a specific port. Candice
It
can
does.
correct me. Okay, it does. Okay,
does.
great. Okay. So that would be my only concern. I do agree that we don't need to block GA on this. I would love to see this new concept get you know, hidden behind an experimental gate, so it can go, you know, it can join, you know, GA in a not too distant future, because I think it is a useful addition. But I'm fine if it doesn't join GA in this, you know, like we GA what we have, but we don't just completely ignore this. We just aim for experimental with it, and that can be tracked or pushed by someone else, so it's not more for Candace to deal
Roger
with.
that. I think that could potentially be valuable, so we don't run risk of like yet again having to push it back.
It's not just me who would see more work with this. It's all of the implementations that have already implemented
I
as
think
is.
that. Oh, sorry. Candice, did you finish? What's important to me, and by the way, when we say a lot of work, right, John, and volunteer to also, you know, put the work needed, but like, yeah, we don't necessarily need to bring in GA, but what I think, and my concern is that I think that necessary changes to the gap has to be there before, because we risk ourselves being non-backwards compatible if we're coming up with the status of, you know, you have a backend TLS policy. This means that your controller is expected to, you know, that the gateway or the client is expected to issue TLS regardless of whatever else. So I think that, I mean, at least the thing that's important to me is the language and the semantics in the gap, and then we could do namespace as an optional, obviously, you know, using the right policy target ref. But yeah, namespace is an optional and guarded by experimental if we want to do it. But yeah, I would vote that the changes to the gap, to the semantics, which again are not huge, but like they're calling out the difference of the clients being able to override, are going to be in.
Lior, isn't it the difference? Isn't the difference though? I'm literally mean this as a question. Like, I just so we're clear, isn't the difference that if we don't add this now, it just means fewer implementations, but enough to be to meet our conformance criteria, can implement it, but as soon as we add this field, all that does is just additively enable more implementations to utilize it? Is that not the situation we're in? Or am I misunderstanding?
Yeah, I don't think that's the situation. I think every implementation can implement it as it is right now. It's just that there's a huge surface of functionality that's important for both meshes and also gateway controllers, like basically everything that's implementing client server, that needs to be in scope. Now, I think actually, you know, if we edit right now, let's say if we were to edit GA right now, there may be a situation, as Candice pointed out, where some implementations already implemented without this namespace, and that means they would not have time to make it implementable by GA. So I am fine by editing this as experimental and not as part of GA. But I do think the semantics are very important. So like to be in the gap before we actually GA this feature. So even if we call it out as like, this is experimental, and in the future, we're going to GA this namespace field as well, which means everyone that implements backend TLS policy have to implement this
Right.
reconciling of a namespace as a future iteration. I still think we should very much call it out in the gap and have some of the changes John added in there.
Okay. So just so I'm just more questions, just I want to be super clear on what the positions are on this, because again, I haven't reread this for like 2 weeks. So you're saying it's very important that we at least get this in as experimental. Is that specifically because of mesh support?
No. It's also because of gateway, and therefore, okay. Like, I'm happy to. By the way, since we have light agenda, I'm happy to spend this meeting talking about all of it. But like, I'm not going to do it unless we have time in the end. But like,
we probably have to time box ourselves to 5 minutes. But yeah.
Yeah. So what I'm saying, like, it's not for mesh support. So it was that's the impression I want to get out. Right. It's equally important for gateways. Yeah.
Okay, Flynn.
A lot of that discussion to me kind of boils down to changing let me phrase that differently. We have a process by which you can add experimental features to a thing that's already been GA'd. I would recommend that we follow the process, GA the thing without the experimental namespace field if we're going to GA it, and then immediately follow up with another gap, adding that namespace field. And maybe that can be, part of it. Or sorry, maybe that gap can come out before the end of 140, but I'm not sure I see a lot of reason to try to wedge the experimental feature into the gap that's meant to take the thing to GA if we're kind of looking at it and going, I don't know if we really have time for this for 140.
I tend to agree.
Rob?
My concern here is I think this is not going to be the first or last time that we run into what turns out to be a non-trivial gap in an API. And I would feel more confident about calling this API GA if we could point to immediate and forthcoming plans to close what others would perceive as a gap in capabilities.
Yeah, I'm not going to
of
lie,
that API.
Rob. What you're saying is an argument in my mind against calling this GA in 140 and saving the whole thing for GA in 1.5. That's, kind of my personal bias there.
My
Dun,
suggestion
dun,
would be, yeah.
I
I
need to
mean,
get that as a
you're right.
soundbite to
You're
play,
right. My own personal opinion here is that because the change that's being proposed is backwards compatible and fairly small, it's the addition of a single field. I am hesitant to push this to, I'm hesitant to do two things. I'm hesitant to try to add a new field as we graduate to GA and call that new field GA, but I'm also hesitant to completely delay the GA of a feature because we're waiting for one new field. So to me, the kind of middle ground of all our possible options is to GA what we have, while at the same time saying, here's a fast follow. This is going to be GA in the next release, but we're, guarding it with an experimental field to start, just to be extra careful. That's, I know a lot of people have put a lot of time into backend TLS policy. I think it is, to be blunt, embarrassing to our API that we can't cover backend TLS in this API. That's like table stakes feature that we can't represent at all. Getting this to, we can, but it's experimental. Getting this to GA feels like a pretty important step. And if, as we're saying it's GA, we can say, hey, we've got this thing coming. If you look at this and it doesn't work for your personas, for your organization, don't worry. In the next release, we're going to have this one additional field that helps cover you.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And Shane, I don't want to preempt you. Just one other thing, like Flynn, I think, and Shane, you guys said that you want to read this gap, right? So maybe it's better if we discuss it after we all read it again, right?
Yep. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I was going to say we got to lock into this minute so that we can give there are enough other things that we don't necessarily want to take another 15 minutes on this and miss opportunities to talk about some of the other items. So I think the follow-up is I will take the action of reviewing again and then putting a comment that explains what we talked about on this call in the PR and what the options appear to be, which appear to be wait until it's all one thing, and that would probably be 150. Go forward without it and say it's additive in 150, or do the mixed mode thing, which is send it in as experimental along the side. And I can see benefits and pluses and minuses to each of these. I agree with what Flynn said, but I also understand and agree with some of what Rob said. If nothing else, the experimental field, having it there,
John's here.
Could be a he got invoked. He heard we were talking about this.
Clearly.
Could be a good communicative thing, if nothing else. So I think we do need to continue it, but let's continue it on that thread. Anybody who heard this conversation and was interested, please take a look at poll 38. Did I get the right one? 3835. And
Yeah.
please put your comments on there, and I'll do a wrap up and kind of a summary of what we talked about there as well. And
I
we
do
should
think
move
it's
on to the
worth.
next topic.
Well, I was going to say, I think that we should give John a minute to
Yeah, sorry that I joined late. I just wanted
since he's actually the one who wrote the proposal, right?
I have no issues.
How much
with
did you hear,
adding,
John?
The back half. I think once you started talking and Rob stopped. I have no problem with adding fields later, but I do want to call out that the GEP is both adding fields and also changing the semantics of the API. And so the semantics changes like can't go after GA, I would assume. So we'll just need to take that into consideration. That being said, the actual changes are very fuzzy. Like I don't even think the conformance tests will need to change at all. I think a lot of the implementations, I know of at least 2 already implemented the way the GEP says. So they're like minor changes, but I do think that we need those changes in. Otherwise, it's not really compatible to change.
Okay.
I think that's an excellent thing to call out. Thank you.
Well,
Yes,
that's yeah. I mean, this
That's
is
what
what
Lior
I
was trying to say.
Yeah. I
Thanks,
mean,
Lior.
for some reason, someone was calling that I said it's important to make the API changes early, where I said, I think, yeah. Anyway, yeah, changes to the GEP is important for 1.4 regardless. That's the thing. And yeah, and like lastly, I think we should be considerate, like as a reviewers, about the timeline here if we actually want to make something workable for 1.4. I think because I don't remember when was our last meeting. It was like maybe a week or a week and a half ago about it. And yeah, I'm not sure where the changes went in, but like, yeah, we should all review it in a very short time slot.
John, in your mind, does it seem even feasible to get the whole thing done with conformance in 3 implementations or more? You said that conformance wouldn't change for the one, like, is the option of actually having the whole thing go out in 1.4 even feasible given the timeline of like releasing it September in your mind?
I think all of the implementations I know, which is not all of them for sure, but have already basically implemented what the GEP says because they misinterpreted the original GEP and thought it behaved the way that the GEP is saying. I'm not talking about the new fields. The new fields, like I'm totally fine with those going experimental. I think that's even probably a good idea.
But the semantics specifically.
The semantics, yeah. I don't. Yeah, so I actually do think it's feasible by September timeline. And I haven't, yeah, I'm also happy to help out on adding some of the conformance tests as well. If there's some gaps that we have, I'll have to stick it with Candace because I don't know what I know you've done a ton of work, but I don't know if you've done all the things that we need or if there's some things left that need owners, but I can take those on if needed.
Very much appreciated. What do you, Candace, you go ahead and then we'll go to the next topic.
Okay, I just wanted to see if we could make the decision by the next meeting that we have instead of just keep playing this along. Only
Yeah,
because
we should absolutely endeavor to have this done within the week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great, thanks.
Like a decision made within the week, and yeah, so it will be a high priority item this week. Cool. Glad you joined, John. Thank you, Lior, Candace, everybody, for the conversation. I'm glad we had that conversation. That was helpful for me as somebody who needs to catch back up on everything. I'm gonna go reread it all tonight or tomorrow, and we'll have some comments. So I took the action item of like trying to summarize some of our discussion here and some of the options that we have so we can start making that decision within the next week. Moving on to the next topic, Rose, docs overhaul. Rose Wright docs overhaul.
Yeah, so basically all this GitHub issue is saying is, first off, port the doc to Next.js and use this template specifically so we can use next config so that we can fix our issues with hard coding links and like having a cascading failure there when we want to reorganize and so this GitHub issue basically outlines how we would implement like absolute routing and automatic permanent redirect generation and like and dynamic internal linking. So if like we like move something around, we don't have to update it in 1,000 places.
I'm just laughing at Shane highlighting the money quote in this thing. Navigation is confusing is such a massive understatement. It's not even funny. So, yeah, I would be delighted.
I navigate the website with Vim in the repo. That's how I navigate it. It's fine
yeah.
that way.
Yeah, that's
no,
a great solution, Shane.
Right. We're joking, Rose, but that is a very good point. We appreciate you putting this in. So
it's still confusing for me to like figure out.
It is
confusing for me.
Of course, we didn't necessarily mean to cut you off either, but we agree very much that it is a confusing website.
Yeah.
Was there more you wanted to add?
Not really. Just like take a look at it, and at the very bottom, there's a section which is like next steps, which is just like after we're done like actually fixing the foundation of the site, we can start looking at like implementing best practices when it comes to like content strategy, so that like the docs itself read better.
Roger that.
I'll point out two things. One of them is that we will have to coordinate with SIGDoc or the other Kubernetes folks. And the other one is, Rose, you realize that by filing this, you're kind of volunteering to do a bunch of work. So just be aware.
Yeah. I like writing JavaScript. It's a lot easier than all the stuff you guys are doing. So
we would welcome it.
Yeah,
I mean,
appreciate that. A lot of us are. I'll speak for myself. I am absolutely incapable of making a decent looking website. It is not even a thing I can do. I do networking, and websites are my bane. I would do all my websites in flat HTML like it's 1998 or something if given the ability. So appreciate the perspective.
In a past life, I wrote a ton of JavaScript actually, so I'm really excited about this. This is great. So
I'm
no,
really excited for other people writing JavaScript. Yeah.
But no, this is exciting. I'm happy to see what you come up with here, and I will echo what others have said. I think our docs are wildly confusing, and every form of improvement here sounds very exciting. So my only thing would be, do you know, like, do you think you're going to be able to change the underlying framework while maintaining the existing URLs? Because there's a non-trivial, or at least redirects for the existing URLs, because there's a non-trivial number.
Mentions the SEO concerns right here.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's the obvious awareness. What do you think though, Rose?
So my plan for like the initial is probably just going to be going through and hard coding everything for doing the redirects, just so we never have to do that again. And it's going to be very annoying.
Yes. All right. Well, no, thank you. Thank you for taking that on. That I agree that will be very annoying, but thank you for volunteering. And yeah, awesome.
Yeah, thank you for this very well thought out proposal. Candace has a hand up, I just realized.
Yeah, I think the proposal looks great. I just wanted to note that we should be using the Kubernetes documentation style guide and not the Google documentation style guide. That will help with getting it past any SIGDocs review for sure. And the second thing is I'm also interested in the size of the project. Like, is this going to take a year to do, or noting that this is something I'm sure you do in your own time. I'm not sure whether your employer is paying you to do something like this or not. It's and it doesn't matter, but it, to me, it looks like a huge project, and I wonder if it could be broken down into smaller parts, because we have a lot of people who come in looking for, ways to get started in the community, and they want small projects, something that they can finish like within a week or two. And whether this kind of project can be broken down into something a little bit smaller than that. And you don't have to answer the question now, but I just wanted to put it out there as a suggestion.
That's a good suggestion. So I'm a college student, and it's summer break, and I'm bored. So I have
Oh.
a lot of time until like September, basically, to just write a lot of Next.js. So I'm probably thinking like getting this done in like 2 months, maybe 3 months. I'm not like completely sure, honestly, because this is like my first time doing something like this. But I know how the code works. I'm new to doing open source.
Well, thank
Roger
you.
that.
Anyways.
Blake?
Yeah, I was just curious if there had been any kind of analysis done, I guess, on the current system we use. And like some of the things you're proposing here sound really great. I'm wondering, are some of these possible with the current MK docs that's being used to generate the site? Are these just things that could be implemented using that? Or do they require using this other framework that you're proposing that has some of these advanced features or things maybe built in?
So I don't know MK docs nearly as well as I know Next.js. So that was probably part of the reason I proposed switching it to Next.js. I'm not sure if we could do all of the like linking and routing stuff in our current framework, but another reason is just like there's a ton of really good templates with like a ton of features built in already that we might want to implement if we were doing MK docs.
Roger that. That's a good point. Blake, are you? Oh, if you're talking, you're muted.
No, I'm not talking. Go ahead.
Okay. It's a good point. If you wouldn't mind throwing that in a comment here, we're going to have a conversation. This is a big thing, so I guess we would have to have a conversation here. I'm going to probably take some time. I put it as a to-do for myself to put some comments here. But if you wouldn't mind throwing that comment down as like a discussion point, we should have that discussion.
Sure thing.
Yeah, we don't need to throw cold water all over it or anything, but there's definitely like, as an undertaking, we have to think about all the ins and outs. And we do have to think about ultimately how all these networking people, which again, I'm not trying to speak for everybody, but assuming everybody's at a level, most people are at a level similar to mine, are going to maintain that in the long run. So just things to think about.
Because all of us know how to maintain McDocs sites.
McDocs. Oh my God.
I mean,
I've never heard it called that. I love it. It's McDocs. Why haven't we called it that before? I don't know, no, but you're right. That's fair point too. Like a discussion should be had, but
there's definitely a discussion to be had there.
Don't want to lose the energy either. So
yep.
We'll jump on here. This looks really well thought out. Thank you, Rose. You'll see a conversation going. Candace has already put something on there. I will. If other people would please take a look. That is it's issue number 3860. So if you're interested in this, it seems like we need to take a little time, do some async discussion. Please post on 3860. And let's see if we can bottle that lightning. Thank you, Rose. Did I lose the doc? Where is it? Oh, I'm in the wrong web browser or something. Okay, here we go. Okay. Cool. All right. Snorwin, how to proceed with semantics. We have 15 minutes left. We should have plenty of time, I think, but we'll see. I took triage off the thing. How to proceed with semantics of URL rewrite prefix replace.
Yeah, I think Lior brought up the issue originally, but we also kind of facing feedback from users that they are confused on how the prefix matches are replaced, as there is some ambiguity, at least in the implementation. So there exist implementations handling it a bit differently. I think also several issues open for the topic, at least at Envoy and Istio. And so depending a bit on how you read the API specification, the result can be different or interpreted at least in a way that it's implemented in different ways. And I think it would be worth to clarify it and then also to cover it really with conformance testing. But I don't know, so it's so I'm up to your opinion. So I tried to make a proposal of a table of how it could look like, but I don't think that it's final yet. So there is still popping in comments, but maybe at some point we need to make a decision on how it should behave. And I think.
Have we already, maybe a question for Shane or anyone who's looked at this recently, have we already added this to the 1.4 milestone?
No. This particular issue is not in the 1.4 milestone.
I feel like it should be. Lior, correct me if I'm wrong here, but this feels like a pretty critical thing to agree on.
Yeah, it is. And, you know, there's also two issues from Istio and from Envoy Gateway for actual users that complain, and Snoring right now also reinforced it. Yeah.
Okay.
Has
Well,
anybody tried to do the work of feeding taking the things in the table and building out a table to show what existing implementations actually do?
I think John has been tested. It was back in February. All the Envoy implementations have been tested, some of them. But I think if I remember correctly, none of the implementations actually did the same thing. Again,
in my experience, I think I tested 3 Envoy ones and they all did the same thing and they all were wrong, in my opinion, at least wrong.
Yeah.
And that's just because the semantics of the HTTP route is like this prefix, or sorry, this like path segment oriented, whereas the semantics on Envoy was just raw string replacements. And so you'd end up trying to replace a segment or something, but it would like merge it with the, I don't know, you'd have to see the example somewhere. And Envoy can't do it, like, to be fair. Like I put up a unmerged because we were still resolving the actual desired behavior, PR and Istio to do what I thought was the desired behavior. So it's not like it's impossible and we need to like go fix Envoy to make it happen. We just need to decide what is the desired behavior and probably write a conformance test, and then we can all go make it happen.
What did you have to do for Envoy? Did you just have to tweak the patterns to make sure that they always matched a full segment, or did you have to
I had
switch
to write
regexes
a disgusting regex.
Yeah, okay.
But like it probably if someone wanted to save us all from disgusting regex, we could go implement some native rewrite in this manner in Envoy. But it's definitely possible to do so.
For people who are not familiar with working with Envoy, discussing regexes are part and parcel of working with Envoy. So don't hold that against John.
The table I posted, that's actually what we have implemented, and we're also using Envoy, and I can agree that the code is pretty ugly and complicated to have a behavior that is from a logical point consistent. But it works, so I'm happy to share some regexes with you if I can help. It's pretty close to what Istio already had in the proposed PR. But yeah, with Envoy it's a bit tricky, but I think the current behavior or the original out-of-the-box behavior Envoy has is confusing for the users to they need a lot of trial and error to get it right.
Yeah, and by the way, if I remember correctly, also the path prefix native Envoy implementation is actually non-conformant with already existing Gateway API, what we define in Gateway API table. So regardless of this, gap with the slash. So if you go up to the top chain, like there is already what's defined in the API, which is the upper table. This is defined And if I remember correctly, I think, and again, there's a chance I do not, but like Envoy has a fast prefix, which is not implementing this correctly as our expectations. So yeah.
I can certainly take the action item to see exactly what Linkerd implements here, but there's zero chance I'm going to be able to do that this week, for the record.
Yeah, I think they'll be useful. I mean, and I think more than that is just going to be useful if we all think the semantics, regardless of the implementations, if the semantics of the lower table are actually something that we agree on, and if yes, we'll just go make it happen. It's and it's possible. I 100% believe Linkerd is also capable of doing this in one way or another, right? So.
Okay. I have added it as triage needs alignment, so there's continued testing. Ultimately, it sounds like we need to do, and added it as a task on 140. So I will try to be on top of getting that lined up to actually have some sort of resolution by 140. I'll work with everybody on the issue on that. Sounds like work. So thank you for bringing this up, Snorwin. Appreciate it. Thank you for bumping it. And Rob, I think, is right. Like we probably should have some sort of a decision made by 140 on this one.
Yep.
Okay. Wonderful. Cool. Okay. That's good. Last but not least, with 8 minutes on the clock, Rob, you are just asking for additional looks at these. So I was
Yeah,
messaging
let's
Rob
do
about this
a
earlier.
speed run
These are all
through
these are all related to 140.
Yeah, these are all the experimental ones that have PRs open right now. The first one is really just a call for implementations to take a look, because the authors of the client IP, or sorry, we're gonna, I don't know.
Did I go reverse order maybe? Here, let's
Yeah,
get there.
maybe. Yeah, this one. This one I think is at risk of not moving forward. Like it's fine. We probably merge it as provisional, but it may not make it any further than that. The concern is right now that there's only one gateway API implementation that we've identified that can support the kind of client IP based session persistence that is proposed here. There may be others. It'd be worth taking a look if you are working on an implementation that would be interested in something like this. Otherwise, I think we're at a fairly critical juncture where we just don't have the broad implementability that we had hoped we would here. So yeah, this is really, I would say, close to blocked, waiting on implementations to come forward.
Yeah. The way I looked at it and kind of had the same impression that like this is at potentially strong risk for getting declined ultimately. Like we can merge it provisional, but so my take on that was is the author on here?
Yeah, I am the author. Yeah.
Hey.
Oh, great.
So yeah, my take is similar to what Rob said, Arahant. It's am I pronouncing your name right? Arahant?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay. My take is that I put it as we probably shouldn't go into provisional and then immediately start going into like deep design based on your your specific perspective. We probably need to take some of that time in provisional to go find people, because this one's going to require more alignment than the average one. Just because there seem to be a lot of people interested in it, but we just don't see like other implementations at the table yet. So that will be one of the challenges of moving this one forward in the 1.4 timeline, is like, if we merge this, I would say immediately go on, Slack and discussions and show up on these meetings and try to generate or try to kind of get some additional people who would be like, yeah, I want to implement this. This is important to me, because otherwise it runs the risk of like stalling out. If that makes sense. Does that make sense? Do you have any questions about that?
So mainly the way things were there, that as defined in, I think, this GP 1619, mainly the way session affinity and the weak session persistence, which is called session affinity. So I think most implementations are being of client IP, they are going in that category. It has this session persistence via backend policies has a very clear description, definition, or what is the difference between a weak session affinity and if you can go to here, relationship of session persistent and session affinity section. So I think mostly client IP based session persistent, it is going into the session affinity thing, which seems to be blocking this issue.
Sorry, I'm not sure. I thought the concern was that there weren't, what you were proposing here is closer to a strong session persistence, whereas what other implementations that support something, you know, labeled client IP session affinity is actually a different thing.
This was my understanding as well.
Yeah. So I think like the idea was it was maybe my misunderstanding initially also that what I was thinking that it was always a strong session persistence, these implementations which I had mentioned also. Mainly these were falling into a category of session persistence. All the things like F5, RV, and I think Azure also had one.
Okay. So do you do you see this as, so we did add a comment, like a to do in here, that we need to kind of like see if it is possible to even use the existing APIs, or like where this ends up living. Do you see this end up living as something that, like, how did we phrase it here? Like the functionality that's already established, do you see this as additive, or do you see this as a separate thing?
I see it as an additive in the session persistence field.
Okay. And to that end, do you know any other implementations, maybe ones that implemented what we have so far, that you think would be keen to implement this new additive thing?
No. So I think right now only Avi is going to do that.
Okay. So that's okay. I got you. All right. I think I get where we're at now. So that's what we were saying is the risk. For gateway APIs, like the proposal to me sounds fine. Like the proposal itself is not the problem, but the risk is for a proposal to move forward. So for this thing to become additive on top of what we've already established, and for it to ultimately make it to standard, we need to have 3 implementations that implement it at least and have conformance. And we can call that extended support. If all implementations can support it, we call it core, but we have that provision for extended. So to get it to move forward at all, we have to have 3 implementations. And so what we were saying was you could go right into design of this thing from the perspective of your implementation, but we foresee some risk here because we're not sure that we see other implementations ready to come to the table. If only one implementation can do something, then we generally say, okay, you have your own CRDs and do that until such a time that there are more implementations, and then it's okay to bring into upstream as a standard. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. So mainly that's why I think it is going through experimental stage, and can we try implementing it as experimental, take the risk?
We can try implementing it as provisional. Actually, like that's, you can, we can, or sorry, we can get it to provisional and like play with it. We have this whole thing called prototyping in provisional. We can actually try it there if you want. And say, create a prototype. That is actually potentially a good way to bring in other implementations by giving them something prototypical to look at. As far as going to experimental, I think it will struggle to go to experimental if it kind of is locked in this, like we saw just with I think it will struggle to go to experimental if you don't have a couple of other people who are like, yeah, I need this kind of upfront, even if we don't have all the details figured out yet, just because of what it is and how specific it is. It's not that there's anything wrong with what you're doing, but I'm just not sure how general it actually is yet. Does that make sense? So trying to figure that out ahead of like anything else and using a prototype to say, okay, well, here's something prototypical you can look at. Does this work for your implementation? Is potentially one way to do that. We have a path for that in the get process.
No.
I'm going to point out that we're actually at time right now.
Whoopsies.
And I have to bail to go and do something else. In the meeting docs, Rob mentions 3 other PRs, 2 of which are mine. Those 2 should have all the feedback addressed by later today. So maybe take a look at those 2 tomorrow.
That.
Yep.
Yeah,
and it is possible.
Please
Go
get
ahead,
them
Rob.
in today if you can. If not, we can, talk about exceptions for extensions here. But all of these have at least one approval, so I feel like they're close. Just have a couple comments that need to be wrapped up. So hopefully we can get them all in today.
Roger that. So yeah, everybody, if you could please, anybody who has some time and wants to kind of see what's going into 140 to experimental, please take a look at these PRs. Arahant, we will follow up with you on this PR. We ran out of time. We have some comments on there. We'll follow up with you. If you feel like you're getting stuck like that or anything like that, just call that out. Say, I feel like I don't know what is, how to move forward with this. But at least for the moment, I think we could probably move it as provisional, and then we'll work with you on the next steps, if that makes sense.
Yeah, sure. It does.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you, everybody, for your
Talk to y'all
time.
later.
We're going to adjourn until next time.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.